Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Springfield at the Sangamon Auditorium, where the Illinois Symphony Orchestra is rehearsing for their next concert. Well, before this rehearsal, we got a chance to catch up with the new music director and conductor, Alastair Willis, and find out what makes him tick. Well, Alastair Willis, we're just about halfway through your first season as the music director and conductor of the Illinois Symphony Orchestra. How do you feel?
I feel great. I'm having a wonderful time.
Are you?
I think we've got off to a great start, and I'm just thrilled to be here.
We can hear your musicians tuning up backstage. You're here for a daytime rehearsal today.
That's right.
And you're going to do 3 pieces this week. And actually, I would like for you to discuss the first piece you're going to rehearse today. And because we're going to be shooting some of that rehearsal, and as we watch you work with the orchestra, we'll get some feeling for what it is you're trying to convey to the audience. What was the piece you'll be working on first, and how do you work with the orchestra on that piece?
Well, we're going to be playing Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony is the first thing on the rehearsal. Last night I had time with the strings alone, so they're up to scratch with some of the ideas that we'd like to do. And the woodwinds and brass and timpani are here today for the first time. And what we're going to do is we're just going to see what we can do. I mean, this is a war horse. This is a well-known symphony. Yeah. This is just one of the most incredible musical experiences to play, to listen to. And thank goodness for Tchaikovsky. It's wonderful. So every conductor approaches this piece differently. I have some thoughts about how I'd like us to approach it. And my job is now to make sure, of course, we're playing the right notes and the right dynamics and everything, but to try and find what's behind the notes. For me, that's so important. That's the crux of the matter here with Tchaikovsky. And what is he really saying behind this symphony?
You know, a lot of people don't know how symphony orchestras work, but I was surprised to find that musicians are so talented in an orchestra like this that they come in already knowing the notes. I mean, they've got the music down, and it's a matter of forming it and putting your conceptualizing it to the way you want to hear it. But I think people say they only practice once or twice before a concert, and it's true, isn't it?
It is true. These are highly skilled professional musicians. They've spent 6 to 8 hours of their lives, 6 to 8 hours a day for 15, 20 years of their lives in a small practice room, criticizing themselves to perfect their art and get to where they are in this competitive arena that we have. And they are all here because they deserve to be here. They've won an audition, or they play at a standard high enough to join us, and it's a thrill working with such wonderful musicians. Now you add all that to a piece that's well known, that they will have played before under other conductors in other symphony orchestras, and so my idea is to unify our thoughts, and that's sometimes easier said than done, sometimes harder done than said. And I guess over the years, with such a warhorse like Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony, there are traditions that have been passed down in certain measures to do something. And where I like to start as a conductor is, well, what are those traditions? Are they what Tchaikovsky wanted? or are they not? Should we continue them, or should we do what Tchaikovsky said? But did Tchaikovsky say something in a letter about this message, about this particular passage, that isn't indicated in the score, but we can have authority to do a rallentando here because he said elsewhere? All these little things inform the big picture that I'm going to try to express to these wonderful players, and that will unify our thoughts together.
It sounds like you almost need a concert comment session with the musicians, because there's a lot of information to exchange, isn't there?
And I will express that through my arms, through my face, and while they're playing, and then when we stop and need to fix something, then I'll use words. But they are such incredibly tuned musicians, ready to move on a dime, on a penny, or the smallest. They're so incredibly sensitive to what each other are doing and what I'm trying to show, that it's a pleasure to be able to not say anything with words, but show it, and I don't have to say anything, so it saves time.
When you come into a position like yours, heading a group like this, if it were me, I would be very nervous, because I'd want to be accepted and I'd want to be respected, but I would also want them to know that I'm the leader. That's a tricky situation, isn't it?
Well, I guess so, not so much so as a music director, but as a guest conductor, I completely agree. I spent the last 10, 12 years guest conducting orchestras around the world, and sometimes you show up and they think, who is this punk? And he looks young, and he's younger than I am, so what does he know about music? Well, and they put up this attitude, and that's kind of natural. I mean, how many young or how many non-seasoned or inexperienced conductors have these players had to play for before? Because the bottom line is the musicians are paid to do what the conductor says.
Right.
That doesn't sound right on one level, but that's just how it is. Yeah. My job as a music director is they know me. It's not my first time here. This is my 7th or 8th concert here. So we're building this relationship. They know what to expect in their preparation. They need to come prepared, and we're raising all these levels of being ready to go with these few rehearsals that we have. And then it's a question of what do I want, not just short term but long term. My job is to look long term with the orchestra. Can we put a concert together with very few rehearsals? Sure. And that's what we'll do. But my vision is, I'm currently on a 5-year contract. Let's say I stay for 5 years. Could be longer. I hope it won't be shorter. but let's say it's 5 years for now. Where do I want the orchestra to be in 5 years? To hand off to the next person who comes in? Well, I want to raise the artistic standard. And if I just focus on one concert at a time, that's not really doing it. I'm addressing things to the orchestra about listening, that applies to every piece, about awareness, about style, which will apply to the next time we play Russian music, so I won't have to say so much next time, or a quick reminder is all that will be needed. And I find myself in rehearsals saying, do you remember when we played this piece a few weeks ago, a few months ago? We need that same color here. So it's really tying in a big picture of where this journey that we're on together. And this is so exciting. You know,
I think the players want to learn too, and I think they want to get better and better, don't they? And that's part of where this whole ties in.
Exactly. If as guest conducting, sometimes, to go back to that, sometimes the orchestra hasn't really wanted to do anything, and maybe kind of lazy, maybe they're in a tough time of their season, they've had a really horrible conductor the week before, let's say, and I show up and it's just a lot of resistance. You know, I can either fight that or go with it and enjoy my week as much as I can, or not. And sometimes I get invited back. Often I get invited back, sometimes I don't. But it's really about seizing the moment, seizing where the musicians are, whether they're exhausted from what they've done before, whether they're energized, ready to go. We here perform 10, 11 concerts a year, and so that's not every week. Right. And so we have time in between the concerts to focus on, to reflect on and focus on what's coming next. And I think the energy of these musicians is what is really inspiring me right now, and inspiring each other, I think.
When you were describing being a guest conductor, it sounded to me like being a substitute teacher.
Oh, so right.
And we can't wait until this young guy goes away and our real teacher comes back.
You know, well, sometimes it was the opposite when I was a kid. I mean, I remember I was 13, 14, and we had a substitute teacher. I think we destroyed her teaching career. I mean, she had no sense of discipline, and it was I feel so, even though it was fun at the time as one of the crowd, but I still feel bad about that. But I'm not a substitute teacher. I'm the music director here now, and that's exciting.
I think the ISO is not only celebrating your first year, but I think this is the 20th year since the Springfield and the Bloomington communities got together for the ISO. And so you come at kind of a pivotal time. What's it like coming into a community and having to sort of get to know two communities?
Well, I've not had experience having to get two communities before.
You consider Bloomington, Springfield one community? Is that why?
No. You're right. I think they are two communities.
Yeah.
If we look at the bigger picture, yes, it's all central Illinois, so it's one big central Illinois, but they are two communities as far as I can tell. But there are wonderful connections. The spirit between the two communities, from what I can tell, is great. They're both different and yet similar in a way, not too far away. I think it's another challenge, another added component to being a part of this orchestra, where we perform in one community and then perform in another. As we're thinking about expanding and growing and developing, what may work in Springfield may not work so well in Bloomington, and vice versa. And it's being aware, having our fingers on the pulses in both cities, so that we're aware and able to adapt to best suit their needs. As
you some people may not know that the conductor usually chooses the season of music and which pieces will go with which pieces. Do you have a strategy for that?
Well, you're right, the conductor does choose, but it's always programming is always a collaboration. As a guest conductor, as a music director. I'll tell you a story. When I was offered the job back in May, I think it was, just under a year ago. Of course, that's late in the season, and people need to. We're about to announce our season for next year very shortly.
So you have to work really fast.
I had to work really fast in May because they wanted the season 2 months before I got the job. And I told Trevor Orthman, our wonderful executive director, I said, I'll have a season for you by the morning. And I laugh, and I look back and I laugh how crazy that was to even say that. I mean, I put the phone down, I made a list of all of my favorite pieces, and I thought, wow, this is going to be great. And then I realized, no, that's wrong. It's not about my favorite pieces. It's about finding connections with the communities. It's about finding a piece that is going to make a difference. It's going to make some connection with, which is important to make it relevant. If I'm doing my favorite music, maybe that's going to be relevant, maybe not. So I started doing some research. What have we done before? What worked before? What composers did the orchestra or the audience not like? And to find connections, the Lincoln Portrait by Aaron Copland, that's a tremendous connection here with Springfield. Are there other pieces, because you've done Lincoln Portrait, with connections here? And connections with anniversaries, Benjamin Britten coming up, the Rite of Spring, perhaps next season, that we're planning on doing. But can that be relevant here? My idea of working with the Silk Road, having worked with the Silk Road and Yo-Yo Ma, would it work to get the Silk Road to come here, or is that just my selfish thought? And to find that there are connections with the university, with the Silk Road, for example, with the ethnomusic program at the university here in Springfield, and to think that that might be something that, blesses everyone and engages everyone and unites a community. This is what music can do, and these are the thoughts that I need to have. Just some little examples there. So it took me far more than an evening to come up with the season that we're currently in, several weeks indeed. Of course, then you've got to call the soloists and make sure that they're available, and have backups if they're not. And we had to juggle a little bit, of course, and then there's the availability of the halls, and this determines the size of some of the venues, how big an orchestra we're going to use, etc., etc. Many, many things. So Trevor and I really collaborated on the programming together, and I'm grateful for his support as always on this, and also the board and the musicians. We had a survey: what music would they like to be playing, what music would they not like to be playing, etc. It's a really steep learning curve for me this first year, and the more time I spend here, obviously the more I get to know what works, what doesn't, and the connections that can come.
By now, people have noticed that you don't have a Central Illinois accent. How did you, I think it's English, how did you come by an English accent? How did that happen, and where did you grow up and that kind of thing?
Well, the short story, I was born in America, in Boston. And my dad was Australian, and my mum was English, and they met in Washington, D.C. But I was born here, therefore I have an American passport, and I could be president. I spent the first 5 years of my life here, and then moved to Russia for 5 years. The connection to this Russian program that we're doing this week, we'll come back to that. And then at age 10, my dad was a journalist. At age 10, I moved to England, and the formative years of my life were going to the same school that my mother had gone to when she was younger, and my two older sisters and I also went to this school. And so I think those 8, 9, 10 years, and then university in England were why my accent has stuck more English than American.
Now, you presently live in Seattle.
I do.
And when the board hired you as music director and conductor here, they knew that you lived in Seattle. I think they were probably hoping at some point you would move here, but it wasn't a barrier for hiring you. How is that going to work?
You're right. Residency was not required as part of the contract. And that's a very touchy subject. Some people think, well, the music director should live here. And other people think that the music director should just be here when necessary. The question was posed to me in my interview, let's say in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time, if everything goes fantastically and we grow the season for more concerts than we currently have, which is 10 or 11, would I move here? And the answer, of course, is absolutely. If we do more concerts, if we've grown to the extent that I'm needed to live here, then of course that's an easy question to answer. With the current situation, which is coming in for about 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks a month, I am able to accept guest conducting around that, which is important for many reasons, not only my own personal growth and contacts and experience out there in the rest of the world, but also I'm on my own Silk Road of discovery as a guest conductor. When I conduct in California or in Seattle or in Europe, what I learn there becomes part of my DNA as a conductor, and that only comes back here to bless and to express and to help and inform what I do here as music director. So it's all, I think, it's all connected, and I must keep guest conducting. That's so important. All top conductors have a music director job, and they also guest conduct.
Of course, if you lived here and this were your base, you would still continue to guest conduct, right?
I could still continue to guest conduct, so there's that argument too. But it's not just the guest conducting, it's being able to spend time, and thank you for bringing that up, in some of the greatest musical cities in the world. My sister, Sarah, she plays in the Berlin Philharmonic, and Berlin's one of the most cosmopolitan.
What does she play?
She plays the French horn.
Oh, wow.
And she is one of my greatest inspirations. And to spend time, again, I'm not guest conducting, but if I'm spending time around those musicians, around that orchestra, the greatest musicians, the greatest conductors, the greatest soloists there are, on a week off or 2 weeks there, as I like to do as often as I can, I come back to my guest conducting and my music director position as a better musician and able to give more. It comes down to that.
You'll have to invite her to join the orchestra, just for one concert.
Believe me, the invitation is out there.
Yeah, that'd be a hoot. That'd be great. Be hard to leave Seattle, though, wouldn't it? It's a beautiful place to live.
I mean, I'm ready to leave Seattle. I knew I would never stay there forever. I love Seattle. I have a wonderful little cottage which I rent on Lake Washington. It's ideal. Every time I come in from a flight which is a few hours extra long, longer than if I was to live in the Central or on the East Coast, you know, I get back to my house and I think, wow, I am so lucky to live here, and I love it. And I've lived there now for 12 years. My landlords are great, the situation is wonderful, and I feel, it reminds me of Mahler's cottage. Gustav Mahler, the composer, he would spend summers out, and you see pictures of him on his table with his music, looking out, holding his glasses, this incredibly inspiring nature. And I look out on Lake Washington and the southwest end of Mercer Island, ducks and boats and nature. It just, I feel so inspired when I'm there to get good work done.
Maybe that's why Mahler never really wanted to finish a piece. His pieces seem to go on forever because he's just enjoying it so much.
Perhaps so. Perhaps so.
When you are on the podium and things are really working right with the orchestra, is there a better feeling?
No. If there is, I don't know it.
You know, we in the audience, and I used to sing in a chorus, in fact, this chorus, and I would watch the conductor, because it was very important to watch the conductor at all times. I don't think that there could be a more ecstatic feeling and the feeling of power that you would get with a large orchestra when everything's working together. What's it feel like?
Power. I mean, a lot of people ask me about that. You know, in the audience, or someone who doesn't know so much about music, let's say they see this guy walk to the center, lift up a stick often and raise it, and when it comes down, 90, 100, 50 people react. Mm-hmm. And I guess that, you know, when you're first starting conducting, that feeling can be quite, wow, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And I've seen growing up and some colleagues many years ago, you know, that power go to the wrong side of the brain. Mm-hmm. Whereas really the conductor's job is to help the musicians. We're all there for the music. The musicians are there for the music. The audience is there for the music. And I find that, you know, somebody has to be in charge, yes, but I've done my job as best as I know how when I am the most invisible. Now that's really hard to explain, because it seems like all the focus is on the conductor, visually, but my job is to let the music sing. And if I can indicate to a part of the orchestra that draws the audience's eye to that orchestra, that musician or that section, that's good. That's great. Mm-hmm. And I think I can sort of be a visual enhancer, but really, I don't much like hearing after a concert something like, you know, we enjoyed listening to the orchestra almost as much as we enjoyed watching you. Yeah. I've heard that a lot, and that's not wrong, and I understand what they're trying to say, but I can't wait after a concert when somebody comes to me and says, we enjoyed hearing the concert and the musicians play more than we enjoyed watching you. Yeah.
That's was that you up there? That was a great concert.
Exactly.
Was that you?
You can say that after me and I'll shake your hand even more enthusiastically.
Okay, let's assume that what you're telling me is spot on with the way you feel about it. Is there an emotion that you feel, though? If it's not that feeling of power, or is there a sublime feeling that comes over you when things are all really cooking right?
It's a feeling of smallness. That music is so big, and we're just bringing into life this piece. But perhaps all the music that's ever been composed is going on right now somewhere in the cosmic universe, and we're just bringing down Shostakovich, Arvo Pärt, and Tchaikovsky today. This week. It's also a feeling of slavery, but it's the best kind of slavery. I'm a slave to music.
You're a servant to the piece, aren't you?
Right. But I like slave. I like the word, well, servant and slave. It's my life. It's these musicians' life. It's my main focus. My job is to serve the music, is to serve the composers. And these are chains with which I've loved to be bound all these years so far, and I hope no one ever takes them off.
Are you considering forming a chorus?
We would love to have a chorus, form a chorus. I'm aware of some history of the chorus in the last few years. I'm not fully informed with every part of the history, but it is our intention to have more choral music on our seasons, and how we go about that is still being discussed. Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Would you like to sing with us?
I would love to. I'll try out again. I sure will.
Great.
If we only have a couple of minutes left, let's move away from a chorus is a possibility, but what other possibilities, what other directions, what other things would you like to accomplish in the next 5 years?
Well, I'd like to leave the orchestra in better shape when I leave, whether that's 5 years or longer. And that would be doing my job not just on the podium but off the podium as well, to help the audience connect more with the musicians. I started something, I continued something that was very successful in Florida when I was conducting the coffee concerts down there. Always did a pre-concert talk, and it was me interviewing a musician from the orchestra, not just the concertmaster or the principal oboe, but a section player, somebody who might not always get the limelight. And the whole thought behind that was that the audience can have a greater connection with our orchestra by getting to know the musicians, and it's a wonderful opportunity to do so. Conductors will come and go over time, but the musicians are pretty much here for the longer haul. And these connections are what I think helps strengthen the community, helps strengthen the orchestra, helps strengthen everything about what we do and who we're serving.
That, in addition to your theory that there are a lot of connections to Central Illinois, classical music to Central Illinois, that you haven't learned yet or haven't thought about or haven't occurred to you. And as those things come to the forefront in your head, you'll want to bring those along, won't you?
I will, and just to perhaps end with the Silk Road thought, having worked with Yo-Yo Ma and the Silk Road and his incredible Silk Road over the last 10 years, it's something that is unique about my life. Not many conductors have done that, and so is it possible to bring this unique relationship to Illinois, to Central Illinois? What would it take to get Yo-Yo Ma and the entire Silk Road in my 5th year here to do a concert or a week's residency? That would take one heck of a big check. Yeah. Can I see your check? But it's not just about here. We approached the universities and said, well, how would you feel about the Silk Road musicians, as we've done before all over the world and in America, just recently in North Carolina at UNC, having us here and going into your universities, giving master classes, talking, chatting, would that be something you're interested in? And the responses so far has been very positive. Now, planning 5 years in advance, I've never done that. So how do we get there? Well, why not next few seasons, have 1 or 2 of the Silk Road musicians come as soloists, because they're all amazing in their individual right. And so over the next few years, to have everyone together, familiar faces coming back. This seems to be something that really could be a unifying factor, something unique that I could bring, and something that would work here and connect and be relevant. So these are just some thoughts that were dreams that we'd like to go.
Terrific. Alastair Willis, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Welcome. And on your first season, we're delighted to get to know you a little better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Alastair Willis is full of ideas. It'll be interesting to see what developments occur in the next 5 years. With another Illinois Story in Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.